So you've decided to stay another round. Please, sit comfortably, drink heartily. You seem tired, adventurer. You clearly had of my wondrous tales, and now I bring you one from a land fraught with war and empire. Settle down and listen to this old bard's tale. Vast and strong stretches the grip of the powerful Empire of Novaria, ruled in the white-hot iron grip of its tyrant, the immutable Emperor Novaris. But first, I suppose I must start at the very beginning, the roots of what came to be the Novarian Empire. The lands themselves, as they are today, rich in culture and history, once called itself Woth, a place of famine, war, and barbarism, amidst turbulent clan wars resultant from the wars of the Colossus. The child of Jarl Atara and Selosh, Novaris, rose to power in light of their demise within the conflict. From this point on, Conlaid Novaris, whelmed in power at a young age, began his brutal retaliation against his parents' murderers, and all those who opposed Clan Novaris. Eventually, once the steel and blood had settled, the ones that Conlaid spared were left beaten, broken, and penniless, with no other option but to see Clan Novaris as the true ruling house of Woth. Alas, the worst was not behind them, but the fallout from the Colossus's destructive retribution against the small folk within Urathan brought upon them the Convergence event. But that is a tale for another time. So, this event shattered coastlines, fractured the grounds, and turned the tallest mountains to rubble. The ruin that came from Woth had the people enraged, out for Colossi blood, and turned to their master Conlaid. The young Jarl, in his infinite tactical wisdom, assembled forces to attempt to slay the Colossus that dominated their lands. Dural, the wrathful king, or so the people called it. War drums bellowed, blades clashed against shields, and a blazing call of the horn sent thousands to sure oblivion. The battle, fierce, bloody, returned only a few broken souls from the Battle of Obarian Gulch, torn asunder by Dural's unstoppable might. This, however, stirred in the fiery youth that led them, returning to the battlefield with aggression and brutal efficiency. The siege of Folan's Weald saw the might of Woth cascade across the Colossi's immense frame, fracturing its flesh, but with hours drawing into days, the fatalities grew increasingly in Dural's favor once again. With a final push, Conlaid utilized an ancient alchemical weapon to obliterate the Primordial's unbreakable skin, causing it to retreat. Yet, despite this minor victory, Conlaid's people had suffered losses unlike any they had before, and called the battle a necessary draw, in the hopes that they would rally people into another battle cry. Grief-stricken, the people refused and left the young Novaris alone to contemplate his next action against the mighty beast that trampled the mountains as if ant hills. One night the people of Woth awoke to a mighty earthquake unlike any other, one that shattered hills and crumpled homes. As they looked out over the midnight horizon, they saw a light burning like 1,000 suns, silhouetted by a large, dark pillar of stone. Dural had returned. Within moments, the grounds cracked and fractured as the onerous war cry of the Colossus echoed across the land as it plunged its great blade deep into the world. The land shook with unimaginable force. Fissures of magma and hellish flame spouted hundreds of feet into the air, clouding the sky in thick ash. as the place they called home began to break into pieces, the lands fractured away from Eurothan. Now pushed out into oblivious oceans beyond, they came across a mysterious fog that lay across the distant horizon. As both drifted endlessly towards the unknown, the land fractured even more so, breaking apart, shattering into large continents of their own. The fog eventually cleared as they emerged across it, the lands ground and chiseled by cragged lands that lay within it, and came to a comfortable stop, adrift in a tropical ocean. With his power now fractured, the young Jarl sought to reclaim his lands, but it would not be for some time before society that he had built before would return to the way it once was. But this young to-be emperor had other plans for this new leaf. Declaring himself emperor, he assembled a council of aldermen to advise upon the rebirth of his new empire. They chose to rebuild the land into a great society of scholars, soldiers, and philosophers with grand monuments and palaces to show their power. Thus began the land of Novaria, named after the young emperor's own vain call of ownership. Slowly, cities, towns, villages, hovels, and grand palaces began to spout. First came the capital, the great city of Novarian, complete with its towering architecture and aqueducts. Amongst it grew society anew, business, laws, armies, royalty, and a new occurrence: Magi. Emperor Conlade Novaris, now mature, older, sought to reclaim all that he had lost in the fallout, turning his attention to the now founded megocracy of Varine, a neighboring continent. He assembled a strong army of soldiers and sailed them across the sea to occupy the land, finding little resistance, for the new Magi that had assembled society there were lacking in resources, power, and protection against new creatures that had emerged from the dark corners of the land. A bloodless venture, a democratic treaty reached, and Varine found itself assimilated into the Novarian Empire. This new cooperative treaty brought mages across the waters into Novarian, with it bringing unrest with a less arcane incline. Riots broke out in retaliation of the new eldritch beings that walked amongst the common folk, with many magic users being killed in the violence. Novaris soon sent guards to snuff out the riots with epic efficiency, with thanks due to the inclusion of magic to his ever-growing ranks of military. The riots of 77 NE brought stronger enforcement, removing all dissent against the mages within the land of Novaria and Varine. Now, with the aid of his new consultant Tif Aralost, a prolific mage and mind, the Emperor turned his attention south. Down there, to the south, lay the two lands of Nyrus and Eruvilin, a strong force of scholars and spell swords bonded in neighbouring trade and law. Novaris, believing the occupation to be similar to the one encountered in Varine, sent only a small centurion of soldiers to bring the people of the sister lands into his growing empire. However, the reports never returned, the soldiers vanished, and thus began the siege of Wyvern's Throat. Novaris overwhelmed the divide between the two lands, short stretch of water known as the Wyvern's Throat, and mobilized troops into the lands, annihilating villages and towns with merciless resolve and might. The Nerisians and Eravillans fought strongly against the walls of steel and strategy for months through frostfall into the following seasons. A year passed by, the grounds awash with blood and broken steel, and Novaris stood victor over their rulers, offering his hand in peace. Hesitating, the sister lands went ahead with their inclusion into the empire, Yet, as emissary, they had sent an assassin to remove Novaris from his throne. The assassin never returned, and a note arrived at the doors of the two rulers with the hands of the would-be assassin nailed through them. Thus they had fallen victim to the Emperor's ruthlessness and now accepted their fate. In the years that came, they regretted their rash decision to eliminate Novaris, as he brought greater trade, education, military might, and wealth into the sister lands, and now fully accepting their place within the Empire. With his newfound magical and educated mind growing from this newfound empire, Novaris looked to other lands he claimed to be his, in his ever-growing need to expand. Yet age began to take its toll on the aging emperor, for he had now reached his late 60s. He turned his attention to the prodigal Tiff for aid, and she obliged. The council that he trusted began planning for his replacement, searching for the heir to the throne. For Novaris had many bastard children that could, only through ceremonious tradition, ascend to the throne. Their names accumulated, their homes located, and sent out convoys to inform the families. But, to their unknowing, the aged emperor emerged in the war room, young as he was in his prime. Now, with the ledger of his heirs in hand, sent out troops to wipe out his potential usurpers. Villages and towns vanished off the face of the world, and their records banished to oblivion. Blood still fresh on his hands, Conlade turned his forces to the north, to the industrious land of Ganaria, alongside its several neighbouring lands to its east and west, Cartha, Altmeria, and Nexalia. First to fall to the tyrannical might of the Emperor was the pious land of Altmeria, a peaceful land of piety and communal spirits, but the governing faction was powered by Celestials. The Celestials, wishing to broker peace with the vile Emperor, enacted a treaty that allowed occupation and integration within the Empire, but it was to remain its own theocracy and dictate its own laws by the will of the Dawnfather. Novaris, agitated by this, stormed the council's building alone, crushing them with his bare hands. He emerged bloodied, but held aloft the torn wings of the 7 Celestials. He immediately occupied and integrated Altmeria within his empire, yet a new council of powerful Celestials had emerged and enforced liberty of faith and right of choice within the land, under divine law. Novaris, aware of this, returned to course the Celestials as he did before. He had limped away, broken and dying. The news of this reached Ganaria, and they breathed a sigh of relief, for the now dying emperor could no longer conquer them, to be sure. To their surprise, however, his forces marched onto their lands and stormed from all corners, crippling the continent into submission. Yet the industrial might of Ganaria had the Novarian forces on their toes with each encounter, their traps, siege engines, and weaponry far more complex and superior to their oppressors. The battles that ensued ravaged the legions of the Empire, yet the Emperor remained unfaltered and arrived on shore alongside his troops. With his presence, he decimated the Ghanarian resistance and forced their hand into joining the Empire. Since those days, Ganaria has bloomed with the fruits of the Empire, greater trade, a new mage presence, and an updated military strategy. Yet, there are still some who wish to be free of the Empire's iron grip. As Ganaria fell, Cartha looked to protect its borders. Fortifications erected along the coastlines, traps dug deep into wooded areas, soldiers well stocked. The people of Cartha, ruthless as the man who wished to claim them, with barbaric advancing tactics that would tear apart centurions and legions in their wake. Yet their strategies would only last so long, and as their victories mounted, they became overconfident, confiding solely in their brute force attacks to instill fear within the ranks of the Novarians. Alas, this was to be their downfall, leading to the Emperor's forces pushing through pockets of undefended regions, allowing their might to pinch the Carthan resistance into utter defeat. The battles that ensued after this awakening became bloodier, brutalized, ungodly. The heads of Novarians atop spikes, Carthans broken across the wheel, and civilians caught in the crossfire. Eventually, the two forces exhausted themselves, reaching a soldier-to-soldier armistice. The Carthan armistice was the peace that had been long awaited for years, and the Great Carthan War finally came to a close. Now, the colony has turned its back on the gracious trades of the Empire, creating its own laws to subjugate Magi heretics and those of foreign cultures. Novarus had no interest in intruding upon this, seeing it as solely a necessary step to a humane society, and as such, the atrocities in Cartha continue. The Novarians did not anticipate the dangerous lands of Nexalia, as they did the rugged landscapes of their previous expeditions. The tropical jungles that densely populated their lands brought a slew of disease, poisons, and death to their soldiers, clad in heavy, thickly padded armor. With every step closer to the Nexalian tribal cities, the forces dwindled, overcome with dysentery and gangrenous sores. As they set foot within the cities, hails of poisoned arrows fell upon them, wiping out every legion. The native tribes to Nexalia, knowing now the foreign invaders' presence, searched every square foot of their forests, eradicating the Novarian pests. The Emperor, learning of this transaction, ventured into the jungles alone in hopes to broker a compromise with the tribe leaders. He was met with the same fate as his soldiers, cut down with poisoned blades. And yet, within the following months, he came and returned. The Nexalians, amazed, withheld their attacks and believed Novarus to be one of their gods, praising Novarus as Elokalak, the god of the sun and fire. Enamored, nay, indulged in this, Novarus granted the Nexalians a devolved means of power, telling them to allow the strange people in shining clothes to commence trade. Novarus claimed Nexalia for his empire, unbeknownst to the natives, and continued his search for new lands to conquer. For years, Novarus continued his search for new lands to control, to rule, to own, and found them at last. 60 years of searching, he finally dispatched his soldiers, tens of thousands in rank, to a land before the Foglands, Lerion. This hostile place was barren of life, no societies, no fauna, yet grew from its harsh soils rare and bountiful magical herbs. Soon, without delay, the Magi that followed with the troops established their hold on the land, creating its first society, the Lerion Dominion. The Emperor, impressed with the Mages' entrepreneurialism, awarded them with gold to trade with the rest of the colonies, exporting vast quantities of magical components and importing the necessary materials to build upon the land. However, lurking beneath the dark, ashen soil of Lerion, lay caverns of old that hid many cursed beasts that hungered for life. Soon they emerged, foundations of structures dug just in the wrong places at the wrong time, and thus began their terrorizing hunts. The years have gone by, and yet, no matter how many beasts die, they re-emerge hungrier than the last. The night brings people to barricade their homes, sharpen silver blades, and imbibe in powerful potions to cause disgust to the creatures that may try to feast on their flesh. Now, a society of monster hunters, known to the locals simply as the Hunt, has established itself, aiming to cull the beasts that plague Lerion. Finally, the Emperor could focus his fullest attention on the last discovery on his borders. Caerden, a land filled with raucous knights and vile monsters where valor proves itself a valuable tool in society. As the banner of the Empire approached its shores, the great Queen of Caerden, Calandra, sent her noble forces to escort the troops to her capital. Whilst within the walls, she demanded to see their leader, to seek the head of the Empire. Novaris soon provided, gracing her palace with his menacing presence. Together they squabbled, debated, and jabbed at each other's ego, with of course the illustrious majesty of Caerden winning. Impressed, Novaris offered her entry into his empire with the promise to keep her lands untouched by his dominion's laws, allowing her full autonomy of what would become a duchy. Seeing the potential in this, Calandra accepted, on the condition that she be paid an official visit every year. To this, they signed an agreement, the Treaty of the Caerden Duchy. The Emperor has since upheld his end of the bargain, officially visiting the Duchy of Caerden every year to broker trade and relations between the Empire and its colonies. Now content for the while, Novaris has remained on his iron throne, looking at the empire he has built from nothing. However, one fateful day, across the horizons gazed from his balcony, marched a being he had not seen in over a millennia, the wrathful king. Upon its back, it hauled a great land behind it, searching for a place to find and lay it. Dural soon vanished from sight. Only a day later, a new land to be claimed alongside it. This land would be later known as Kagara, but alas, 'tis a tale for another time. For now, my wonderful friends, take some coin and join another round on me. After all, you do look like you could use some rest before your ventures tomorrow. And, should you ever need to find me to hear another tale, I will always be here, waiting for another soul like you to listen. And until next time, stay safe out there, my lovely strawberries.